we are back at it on the carb isolation tray. Probably should just start calling this an intake isolation tray, since we're getting rid of this guy, the carburetor. And we're replacing it with this, the new Holley Sniper EFI unit. So I've gone ahead, made some reference marks in tape, so that I kind of know where I am when I'm measuring things out. We're gonna get this all marked out, laid out, and then do some bends on our cheap Harbor Freight brake. So I pointed this out in the last video, but we have to do a couple quick bends here because the tray is gonna mount to the bottom of the air cleaner. It then has to bend up and past the distributor and then meet up with the top of the firewall here. So this distance between the end of the air cleaner and the distributor is really important, and where we're most likely going to make our first bend. I'll have to plan that out. So it looks like we have about a 1/2 inch clearance between the back of the air cleaner and the distributor. So we'll make a mark about a 1/4 inch back from that, and that'll be the location of one of our bends. So now we want to take a vertical measurement from the base of the air cleaner to where the top of the firewall is, so we can figure out where our next bend is going to be. Looks like we're going to be right at 2 3/4 inches. If I come over to the cowl hood here, there's actually a taper to the cowl. It starts wider at the back and moves ever so slightly narrower as it goes to the front. And I've currently cut this piece a lot wider than it needs to be. So the plan is to copy that taper to the piece, but since this section here is going to be bent vertical, I don't want to go with an angle right through those. I'll draw it out, you'll see what I'm doing in just a minute. Right now this piece of aluminum is a lot longer than it needs to be, so that's why I have these tape marks. I'm going to take a measurement from the center of the air cleaner to that tape mark and just translate it and reference it to here on the hood so I can start to figure out the taper I want. It might be a little hard to see on camera here, but I did make a mark where the center of the air cleaner is. It's about 17.5 inches from that tape. Doesn't mean anything to you folks because that reference line is just one I made up. And again, this stuff doesn't have to be exactly precise, but now I can take my aluminum tray, set it back on the hood here, center it up in that hole, and get an idea of how my taper is going to work out. So I marked out in red where the hood kind of meets up with this tray. Now the scoop itself takes kind of a more dramatic turn at the front and straightens out as it heads down that way. But the red gives me an idea of where it first intersects, and I can leave a little bit of a flange for the foam. The other thing I've done is just mark on the hood, I'm not sure how well you can see that, where that first bend lands, just so I have some reference material when I'm going back and forth between the hood and this piece. With the tray removed from the hood, I actually have the full width, so I can do some measurements from there and get my flange width at the bend. So the other thing I want to do is put a little bit of a curve at these edges. This section of the hood is still in the cowl, so it's a little taller than the sides, but the foam is tall enough to make up for all of it. So we're just going to make a curve to get a nice clean transition. So I didn't really like the taper that you saw me drawing, so I just kind of used the foam to find a natural position, eyeballed it, and came up with that. Should work great. Now I just need to do the rest of this. So now I've got it all marked out. I just need to cut it, and then I can bend it. So there it is, all cut out. And we'll set it on the motor before we bend it to make sure we like what we're seeing. So it's definitely long and obviously not lying flat, but I don't hate it yet. So this is my little Harbor Freight brake. It's just clamped to the table right now. Should work okay for this. I just have to make sure that I plan out my bends because this part is longer than the area we're bending. So I have to make sure I do it in the right order. So I'm gonna go practice in my head a few times, then come back and bend this. So there it is, all bent up. The bends are close to what I wanted. I think it should work. There's enough slop in this piece. The only thing I need to do is trim the end here because we're a little long and we can't quite put it on the car yet. So looking at the first initial test fit, without the air cleaner in place, you can see I gotta do a little trimming here, a little trimming there, and it should drop right on. So I had to do a little extra trimming because I really wanted to make sure that this was clear of every bit of line and linkage. And right now it's sitting pretty low, and that's because I haven't attached it to the air cleaner base yet. So if I set the air cleaner base in position, you can kind of see how it will come up a bit when it all attaches. So the next step will be attaching the air cleaner base to the new pan. All right, so one more little tweak because I wasn't quite happy with how it was sitting. It was a little high in the front with the 90-degree bends. So I think you can see here, I leaned it back a little bit and I put an extra bend in the middle just to make sure there was no problem with the distributor. And now it sits nice and flat, and I think it should work out pretty well. Now it's all cleaned up, I pulled the plastic off the aluminum piece. I'm faced with how we attach the air cleaner to the pan. You can see I have two spots where I was using Clecos before, and I am going to use rivets there. I'm not too worried about it because the air filter itself sits on top of those. So if the rivet were ever to break or come loose, it's hopefully, probably, maybe not going to find its way into the motor, fingers crossed. But that's only 2 points, so what to do with the rest of it? That's where this stuff comes in. So that's right stuff, 1 minute gasket, the gray stuff. I use it to attach the intake manifold or seal the ends of the intake manifold to the engine. And when you pull that intake manifold, you've got to pry that sucker off of there. So the way I see it, a little bit of that smeared on those mating surfaces that you can see I've already roughed up with Scotch-Brite, and some rivets, we should be in business. Now that that's all glued together and it's got the 2 rivets in place, this part's not going anywhere, but there's this part at the back that overlaps the cowl. And the question is how to keep that from vibrating and being annoying. And that's why I have this stuff right here. This is the 3M dual lockable release. You might be more familiar with this if you have an Easy Pass or something like that, but it's basically like a heavy duty plastic Velcro. So the plan is to put it on the back side of this, and then that will adhere to the cowl and keep things from vibrating. Now I did set this more to the passenger side because that's the flatter, more raised up part of the cowl. I'll probably still throw a little piece on that side once I see where I need to fill a gap. And we'll just make sure it's centered before we jam it down. There. So now once the air cleaner is in place and the bolt is in, that shouldn't go anywhere. So the last step really is attaching this foam. It's from Moroso. It's a fireproof foam, and it's designed for these carb trays. I'm really kind of taking a stab at how to mount this, but I'm going to give some double-sided foam tape a shot. We'll see how long it lasts, but that double-sided tape actually seems to be holding that in there pretty well. So all in all, I think that looks pretty good. I may be adding foam to the back. I'm not quite sure yet. I gotta see how this all seals to the hood, but go ahead and throw it on the car and see what it looks like. I'm pretty stoked with how this turned out. Now I may have to add some foam to the front of this if it doesn't contact the hood, and maybe some at the back to seal it up completely. But really, I think it turned out pretty good for my first shot at doing something like this. So that kind of wraps up this project. This weekend, I'm going to be diving into putting on that Holley Sniper EFI. Don't know how I'm going to break it up, if it's going to be all one video or a couple segments, but we'll see. Anyway, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and watch for that one soon. So I couldn't help it, and I went ahead and threw the hood on. So this is looking in through the wheel well, and it looks like this thing fits perfectly. I'm really stoked about it.